Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Felice with Cert Nexus. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes to allow folks to join us. So if you can just be patient, we'll start in 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Felice, and I'm joined here by my colleague, Megan Smith-Branch from CertNexus. And today we're going to discuss the untapped cyber talent pool beyond IT and the cybersecurity careers. So Megan, if we can advance to the next slide. Again, my name is Jeff Felice, and I serve as the president of CertNexus. And Megan, although we have her name incorrect on this slide, it's Megan Smith-Branch, and Megan is the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Product Officer for CertNexus. If you're not familiar with CertNexus, we're a global certification body focused on vendor-neutral emerging technologies. This is inclusive of data science, artificial intelligence, IoT, and obviously cybersecurity. If we can go to the next slide. We work with organizations across the world. I think as everyone is well aware on this webinar, is that cybersecurity is a concern for organizations across all industry verticals, for governments, and within the industry of companies of any size. And this is just a representation of the types of companies where we've worked with them to help certify their professionals across those emerging technologies, inclusive of cybersecurity. Next. So the first thing we're going to do is explore in-demand cybersecurity job roles. So the first thing that we have to understand is the challenge we face. I think most people will know is that the number of cyber attacks continue to increase. The targeting of those attacks are becoming are increasing as well. So they're better identifying potential vulnerabilities to breach and to obviously where it becomes an incident for an organization. One of the challenges we have, though, is the time it takes to identify and contain a breach. IBM Security, if you're not familiar, they actually produce a cost of data breach report every year. And the time to actually detect or identify a breach and then contain that continues to grow every year, despite all the investments in technology, hardware, software, policies and procedures, and even people. And if you can see right now, it's 280 days. And so to give you an idea of 280 days, it's the gestation period of a human, right? So a woman becomes pregnant, it takes 40 weeks on average to give birth. And that's the amount of time that it's taking right now for us not only to identify, but also to contain a breach, which is obviously causing concern for most organizations. And compounding this crisis is the fact that there's not enough skilled professionals in cybersecurity. This is a report that was done jointly by ESG and ISSA, and they stated that 70% of organizations are negatively impacted by the shortage of cybersecurity professionals. And that's whether the people they can hire in or actually existing professionals and the lack of skills that they may have. And unfortunately, this condition only continues to worsen as it has over the past 4 years. And as many of us may be aware, this isn't just a concern for the US, it is a global concern. ISC Squared has a workforce study that they complete each year, and in 2019, they identified over 4 million jobs globally that were open for cybersecurity professionals. For those who are sitting in North America, you can see it's over 500,000 jobs, and we'll see there's that number remains today even through the challenges with COVID. But again, this challenge, the fact is these numbers grow each year, they're not diminishing. So obviously for organizations is a concern, for individuals, it obviously provides opportunity. And the need is across all levels. But what we should note is that the greatest need is with individual contributors. So if you look at it, the green bar is an increase in need, the light green is no change, and the orange is a decrease. And you can see, although there has been increases everywhere from the C-suite to senior managers to first line managers, the greatest is in those individual contributors, and primarily in those individual contributors with a technical skill set. So where are the cybersecurity jobs? We actually have a great tool that is provided through a platform from Burning Glass. It's called cyberseek.org. And there's two primary tools that are available through this platform. One is, as we'll see here, is actually a map depicting where jobs are located, so a heat map. For those who are attending from outside the U.S., I apologize because this map only extends to the 50 states of the U.S. But I'm sure there are other tools or reports that can give you an idea. But the fact is what we can, for the most part, extrapolate what we're seeing in the U.S. to other parts of the world based on that ISC squared study. For those who aren't familiar with CyberSeek, you can see that in the lower left, there's again, still 500,000 jobs. They actually just updated this the other day, and that number ticked up slightly. So you would think during a pandemic, that the number of cybersecurity jobs may have declined, but in fact they've increased. Obviously, as more organizations are migrating through their digital transformations more quickly, we're working in a more remote workforce, et cetera. That's only increased the need for cybersecurity professionals. For those who are not familiar with this map and are sitting in the U.S., not only can you see a nation level view, but you can actually click into each one of these, into each one of the states, and get a specific view on the opportunities within your state. As you click in, you'll see that the number of jobs openings change, the supply of cybersecurity workers, as well as the geographic concentration and the job titles themselves. But what you will see as a commonality, and the fact is that there's too few people for the jobs that are available today. And what are the skills that are needed? This is another view that is provided within the CyberSeek tool. And it looks at, again, using the NIST framework, the 7 major categories. And you can see that there's jobs across all of them. Obviously, operate and maintain is the largest, followed by security provision and then protect and defend. But individuals that have skills across any of these categories are in demand today. One of the challenges that we've heard is we've talked to other people is they said, well, I have some of these skills today, and yet I've been unable to obtain employment or progress in my career. And and we realize that may occur for some people. It may be that some jobs require security clearance. Other jobs may be not located where you are physically today. Although with more remote work, that is opening up more opportunities. But the fact is that we do know, and again, as it's reported, the companies still have a greater need for people to fill these roles than there is available today. And one of the things we have to understand is there's a shift too. There was through the mid-2000 teens, there was a concerted effort on a lot of what we call the red team or offensive measures, which was to identify and protect. And what we've seen is since the mid-2000 teens and more recently, as demonstrated here by Gartner, is that there's been a shift to detection and response. It doesn't mean that the red team offensive measures aren't still needed, but they're typically fewer in number, where detection and response is greater in number. And again, detection and response are typically blue teaming roles. And what we see now is more purple teaming, especially in mid-sized and small organizations where an individual or maybe a group of individuals have a variety of tasks that they perform that are across number of job roles that actually span these red and blue teams. And this shift is also reflected in job roles. Again, if we go back and look at the cyberseek.org map, we'll see what's reflective here. This again is another study, another graph from the ISC Cybersecurity Workforce Study from last year. And you can see the makeup of a typical cybersecurity team. Again, this would be in an enterprise level. In a mid-sized organization, a single individual may perform in multiple roles. In a smallest organization, it may be someone that does, you know, a handful or more of these roles, or at least the tasks associated with them. So, but what you can see is that really a lot of the need and again, the growth in the specific roles are in those blue team, the security operations, administration, management, and compliance. And there are fewer roles, but yet still in demand are pen testing, forensics, and you know, ethical hacking, et cetera. So I think a lot of us equate hacking to cybersecurity. The fact the inverse is true. Hacking is typically what the criminal does. We do have ethical hacking and other offensive measures that help to prevent or identify those hacks from occurring. But again, the majority of the roles are on the administration, blue team, defensive type roles. And we can see this here as well, the blue team skills. Again, if we go in the look at the lower right, you'll see the top security job titles are those jobs that were just reflected in the ISC Squared study, which are security engineer, security analyst, security consultant, security manager, systems engineer, network engineer, vulnerability analyst. Really, if you look at it, the majority of the jobs, again, are the most in need across in the nation are those blue team skills. Again, we realize some of the red team, those offensive measures are maybe more interest, but again, if you're looking to skill yourself, again, against the NICE framework, you'll look at the majority of the jobs, again, that are available, are most available across the US are on these blue teams. And the last thing that we, before I hand it off to Megan, we really want to talk about the fact that cybersecurity goes across all of IT. We've talked a lot about the database and system side. And if you look, you know, globally, there's about 50 million IT professionals. Of those 50 million, 25 million sit in that administrator type of role. The other 25 million actually are comprised of developers. And if when we looked at the cybersecurity roles that are in need, one of them was coding and secure coding skills. So we got to remember not to neglect our coding friends. And the fact that they need the same skills, well, different skills, but that have the same need to perform their jobs in a secure manner. In this case, many times it's in secure coding, which is a requirement for a number of compliance reason, PCI, credit card payment processing, et cetera. So again, when we think about this, we need to think about this more globally as well. And I'll hand it off to Megan to take us through the cybersecurity workforce framework.
All right, thank you, Jeff. And as much as I would like to be you on almost every day, I think I look slightly different and have a much cooler background these days. So thank you, Jeff. And I really want to, Jeff and I debated about, do we talk and start to explain the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework? And I think it becomes incredibly relevant. And I noticed that Danielle is with us, so I want to congratulate her on the latest version that was announced just mere minutes ago of the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework. So congratulations to everyone that worked on that. But what I realized is that, you know, when I started attending the NICE conference a few years ago, I really needed multiple tutorials from many people on the NICE team and from people attending and those with experience on what was this NICE cybersecurity workforce framework. So I'm going to very briefly and at a very high level, and in no way am I an expert, you know, talk about why this is important. And so that when we discuss, you know, what are the next steps? What can we do to fill this skills gap, which is a continual conversation within this group? And you know, just to sort of level set. So for those of you that are uber familiar with this, you can take a moment, have a sip of coffee, whatever you need to do. But really, this is about talking about the same thing in the same language. The National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework is really designed to create a standard lexicon, terminology, descriptors that allow us to talk about the work that is done in cybersecurity. And this becomes important so we can get past all of the language and really dive into what is needed. So it's split into, and Jeff alluded to this when we looked at the CyberSeek tool, and the reference that I'm showing here is actually from the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Careers and Studies. And so the graphics that you're seeing are just snapshots of this. But it is these 7 categories. And the categories are really just these high-level groupings of these common cybersecurity functions. I'm not going to read them for you, but it really starts to group the work that is done across 7 different functions. And within those 7 functions are these specialty areas. There's 33 of them, and don't do what I did and think that there's 33 under each distinct category. No, there are 33 across all of the categories. So these become distinct areas of cybersecurity work. So you can see here on Protect and Defend that there are 4 specialty areas underneath that category. And then we dive into the work roles. And the work roles are really at the most detailed level. This is the grouping, and I don't even want to say level, it really is a grouping of cybersecurity work. And this comprises of 4 different areas. And these things are, what do I need to know? What is the knowledge? What is the information that I need in order to complete this work role and achieve these things? What are the skills that I need to put time on task? You know, what needs to be observed so that I can confidently and competently achieve the work that is required in this role? And then what is my competence in order to perform this role? And finally, what are the specific tasks within this role? But my favorite happens to be the capability indicators, because from an individual standpoint, this allows me as maybe a non-traditional worker to look at what can I do to achieve this or to learn this or to gain the knowledge, obtain the skills, and really demonstrate my ability within this work role. And this is really where we start to look at what are the resources to prepare individuals for job openings. And I'm not just talking about traditional candidates. Really want to look at who's outside the funnel. So we want to talk about how do we get people that aren't currently in the cybersecurity funnel or on their way to understand and see that getting into the funnel and working within the cybersecurity profession is achievable. So the people that we're talking about are the non-STEM students. So when we think about within an academic setting, for instance, it may be people that are focused more on liberal arts. There's been some amazing work on the work of musicians and their ability to work within IT, cybersecurity, and coding fields. Transitioning service members. I know that NICE does an amazing job and represents all of the programs available for service members that have served our country so well and so for many years or for a few years that are looking to transition away from a military career into a private career. And then we're talking about displaced workers. And Jeff will talk a little bit later about what the future of work is, but within the future of work, we're seeing things like automation and artificial intelligence and the movement of manufacturing that is displacing workers that have the possibility to enter into the cybersecurity profession, as well as career changers. Now, career changers are people that are intentionally looking to change careers versus the displaced worker that is not given a choice. And then we also want to look at diversifying not only by gender or identified gender, but by racial, ethnic, and demographic backgrounds that aren't typically represented in the cybersecurity professions. And really, it is about building up that next generation as well, which falls within all of the categories above. So what are we doing now and what do we need to do to change? And if you take a look on the left-hand side of the screen here, we have university programs. This is very traditional. This is what we know of as the more traditional path for many careers, including cybersecurity, programs that are tied to an academic institution. We have technical and vocational programs, and this is expanding greatly. And we have groups that are within NICE that are working specifically on expanding this, as well as apprenticeships. I mean, last week was National Apprenticeship Week, and so we know that there's an insurgence of this in the States, where we have seen it already globally taking off and being very successful within cybersecurity. We, of course, work within certifications, and this is a way that we can validate all of these non-traditional and traditional paths that people have into entering cybersecurity, as well as early education that we see with our K through 12 partners and government programs that are consistently and regularly promoted by the NICE group. So this is what we're already doing. Some of it we do very, very well, and some of it we can increase a little bit, and we have lots of people paying attention to that. But the work that still needs to be done is really moving away from specific certifications or degrees or licensures, and really focusing on skills and looking at what certifications, what degrees, what licensures, what programs align to those skills, and expanding the diversity, because when we have diversity within population, we also have diversity within skills, thoughts, and abilities. And that really, and also you can reduce bias, you can reduce a lot of what can be lost in terms of having a new view just by increasing diversity across your team. And then we're going to talk a little bit about aptitude and attitude. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then we look at reskilling and upskilling. And you can see by the graph on the screen here that when we look at STEM, 67% of STEM jobs are identified in computing, right? But only 10% of those graduates within those programs, and we're talking traditional academic programs, live within computer science. Now, what that tells us is that there's a lot of opportunity for people who are in that path to continue on their learning and continue on to have the skills and the knowledge that is needed within cybersecurity. So we're going to start off with this idea of aptitude and attitude. And over the years within the NICE conference, I've heard over and over again, it really is about identifying these soft skills. And if you look at the graph on the right-hand side from ISC Squared, the same report that Jeff was referencing earlier, really we've got cybersecurity professionals that are not just coming in through that normal pathway, but we know that the people that are successful, especially in some of the higher level management or even across the teams and larger teams, have to have these skills of problem solving, communication, analytical thinking, collaboration, and teamwork. And with an attention to detail, and with those, what we would say is professional skills or soft skills, you have the ability to then take that individual and skill them up, right? And so we look at skilling in 4 different ways. The first is reskilling. And this is somebody that is a career changer or transitioning into a new role. And this is learning new skills so you can do a different job. You're bringing all of those aptitude and attitude into the role, but you have the ability to train someone and educate them with new skills to do a different job. The other thing is that we also have to upskill continually because technology is changing so rapidly. You consistently have to learn new skills to do the same job that you're doing because the work within the job is changing. And that's what I love about going back to the cybersecurity workforce framework, is that when we look at the work that needs to be done, that stays the same. The tools and the processes are consistently updating, and that's what needs to be done in upskilling. And then there's new skilling, which is learning new skills for future jobs. And Jeff is going to talk a little bit later about the future of work when we talk about things like artificial intelligence and IoT, and within the realm of cybersecurity, what are the new skills for future jobs that we aren't even aware of yet? And then we look at this, transitional workers who are displaced, and the idea that there's a huge opportunity to train these workers for the future job market and maybe not retaining them for our own purposes. And this is where a lot of these amazing apprenticeship programs and government programs can come into play. Now, this is what we refer to as new collar principles. The idea of doing this new way of thinking, and comes from the CISA Cybersecurity Career Paths and Progression Report, is this idea that we want to focus, when we post a job, on those core requirements. What are the things that you really need to bring into this role? Versus what do you need to upskill or train? Whether it's an apprentice program or employee development. And then also developing partnerships and programs within the community and within the networks to advocate cybersecurity education that's widely available. Whether it is increasing that funnel through diversity of programs, looking at K through 12 programs, and also looking at adopting new ways to hire and train, allowing those skills and the knowledge, skills, abilities to be taught because the person has the right aptitude and attitude. And one of the programs that we know has been successful and is increasingly growing, and there's a separate work group that focuses on this, is apprenticeships. And apprenticeships is so successful because they focus on the skills. And this happens to come from the apprenticeship.gov site. But I love this graphic on the right-hand side because you can clearly see why this is beneficial, right? Because you walk right into something that allows you to earn money. You have the opportunity to gain industry recognized credentials while you're at that job that are relevant to the job. And you have mentors that are working with you as you progress through your apprenticeship. And it really allows you to jumpstart your career because you're right within the job force and the workforce. It allows you to get on the job education and even can excite you about potentially getting your degree. Many apprenticeship programs also are tied in with tuition reimbursement with employers. And we know that apprentices who complete that apprenticeship and retain that employment have a much higher salary and have great success. Another thing that we see is really not just training on the individuals that are going into the cybersecurity profession, but the people that are looking to expand those programs. This is one of the speakers that we were introduced to in one of our NICE working groups, which is the National Institute for Women in Trades, Technology, and Science. And they have a program, and this is just one of many programs that goes into community colleges and is really focused on recruiting those diverse populations. And this can be done by creating targeted campaigns to host boot camps, have speakers that look and sound like the people that they're trying to bring into the program. They're introducing new tools across disciplines. One of my favorite stories is when you look at a healthcare field that is introducing the use of cybersecurity because of all of the technology that's used within healthcare these days. And that's just one example. I know that another thing that is being done are opportunity hubs. And I'm going to ask Jeff to come off of mute here because he has had the pleasure of working with OHub out of Atlanta, which is a great example of increasing diversity across technology professions. Jeff, do you want to just talk a little bit about this as a case study of what's being done well?
Sure, Megan. And OHub, for those who are not familiar, they are based out of Atlanta, but their vision is to educate over 1 million people of color, Black, Latina, X, etc., that in skills that will enable them to participate and thrive in the fourth industrial revolution. So their goals are to expose individuals as early as possible. So that's within high school programs, collegiate programs, but also individuals that may already entered their professional careers or have yet to secure a career. And their focus is on skills development and on job placement. So developing skills to allow people to earn. And they're doing that through a number of different programs, but they have brought in a number of other organizations, individuals. If you're interested in participating or partnering with them, there's a link there. But what it does is it allows these individuals gain skills, also learn entrepreneurial skills if that's something they want to do, as well as bring investment into the community. And the goal is for over time is to essentially create wealth and then have that to become intergenerational wealth as well. So that's a great opportunity example, excuse me, of an organization that's doing a lot of great work bringing diversity into the cybersecurity workforce.
And I would encourage people, if you have other organizations that are doing similar things to OHUB, please let the people at NICE know so that we can continue to support and understand where those organizations are. You know, the final question that we need to look at in terms of, you know, what we can do better is, where are you and where do you want to be? So when we look at something like the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework, it really can help identify exactly where you are and across this standard, and then understand where you want to be and at what level. So what additional skills do you need to bring up to begin upskilling and within your current role, or to advance to a new role? And then finally, develop a path, right? So we've shown you a number of different tools. This happens to be also from Cybersecurity. It allows you to go in and, based upon the lexicon that is used in the NICE cybersecurity workforce framework, really start to develop a path and understand what do you need to do and to achieve those different, what we saw on the previous slide. You know, do you want to be at an entry level, mid-level, advanced level, and then really dive into what are the opportunities available through certifications, apprenticeships, online things like online courses, self-paced courses. I think it's very interesting when we go back to the slide that I showed earlier that looked a little bit like a Pac-Man with the blue and the green. When you think about how individuals came into cybersecurity from a different career path, it is because they did self-paced courses, they attended community events. I've got a smattering of icons up here and logos to just give you a sample of a few, but it was really because they were individually or motivated through mentorships or their professional groups to continue on their learning. And so in addition to, you know, certifications and networking, you know, we're often asked at CertNexus, because we provide certifications, well, this is great, but what else do I need to do? Because we often encounter people that say, well, I have all the certifications I need, but I'm still not getting the jobs. So what is that magic potion or that secret sauce that I need? And it really isn't that magical. It really is investing in mentor programs, looking at networks. Right now, we are at a point that things like subreddits and Slack channels, you know, posting things on GitHub, many certifications, we put our certifications through Credible, and it allows you to add into your certification, build a portfolio of projects, of you know, feedback, of GitHub sites, of, you know, subreddits that you've posted that you can attach with your credential, which is available for employers to see. And it also demonstrates continual knowledge and continual learning that you've put in on top of validating those skills through something like a certification. And of course, networking, networking, networking. So women in cybersecurity happens to be specific for women, although there are many other non-identified as women members as well. But the idea that joining a group that can provide support, advice, job postings, etc., is really where you can move from just getting certified or taking a course or gaining a professional certificate and really advancing into employment. Now, when we also talk about advice, internally, getting your managers and getting, even if you are a manager, getting your leadership to talk about what are the skills that we need using the lexicon created within a nice cybersecurity framework to talk about what they are. And then look at the job descriptions that you have. Many people are on the employment side and having a lot of trouble recruiting people. So are the job listings that you have related to the skills and the competencies, or are they looking for very specific tools that you could potentially train to? So I'm going to pass it back to Jeff to talk about the future of work. Before we wrap it up, I think we've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll make sure that we give some time to answer questions. If you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A section and we'll answer them at the end of the session.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. And we'll go through the next handful of slides here just in a few minutes. And really what we want to look at is the future cybersecurity workforce. We really are on this cusp of another industrial revolution. So some say we're already in the midst of it, which is Industry 4.0. And it is emerging technologies that are fueling this, like IoT, data, and AI. And these technologies are changing the jobs landscape. The World Economic Forum put out a report earlier this year that looked at the jobs landscape projected in 2022. And what we'll see is that there'll be a number of jobs that will be on the decline, some of them moving towards obsolescence, but there's a number of jobs that are emerging as well. And in fact, the net is going to be a net add, much like it has been through all the other industrial revolutions that we've gone through. There'll be a net add of jobs. But the fact is we need to reskill ourselves and upskill ourselves to these jobs. So, and it'll be the same within cybersecurity. IoT is probably one of the technologies that is most rapidly changing our environment. And the fact that it's adding truly millions and billions of devices to our networks and beyond. If you think about it, and you're an organization that has, 400, 500 employees, you may have, that number plus a couple hundred devices, let's say under 1,000. But then if you're a transportation company with 500 people, and now you're going to put devices on every truck, trailer, and potentially packages, now you can see thousands, tens of thousands of devices, et cetera. The amount of data they're generating, which at the rate we've never seen before, as well as the need to secure those environments as well. If you look at IoT, it's a system of systems. So not only do you have to secure maybe a network server and maybe a router or switch, but now you're going out to the edge and beyond the edge to these specific devices as well, so that the footprint of and the potential vulnerabilities expands greatly as well. It's the same with data. Again, we're producing more data today than we ever have before, and the fact is it's just increasing every day. So IoT obviously is generating huge amounts of data, and we don't think about it, right? But IoT, right? I moved into a new home recently, and not only is my heating and cooling connected to the internet, but so is my stove, so is my doorbell, and a number of other devices beyond my typical computing devices in my home. So think about all that data it's generating, plus all the data we're generating through commerce, through social media, and a plethora of other routes. So the fact is that there's more data. With more data, obviously, we need to secure that data. Obviously, there's privacy concerns on top of that. But from a cybersecurity standpoint, we need to be able to secure the infrastructure and the data that it holds, because the data is really the new currency of modern society. and artificial intelligence as well. The fact is that artificial intelligence is being used more and more each day across all industry, across all job functions. And the fact is it's growing in the billions of dollars. We're just hitting that inflection point of growth right now within AI. So we're seeing more AI and many more software solutions. And we're starting to see it more in cybersecurity. So understanding how it's impacting cybersecurity. Whether that is edge computing and the security at that end, whether it's phishing simulations, whether it's fraudulent activity in the financial sector and how it's being used, et cetera. We also have to realize that unfortunately, cyber criminals are also beginning to use AI as well. So we need to understand from their perspective how they may be employing it to, again, potentially cause harm. So again, along with IoT, AI and data are all transforming the way we do business, which is, again, a lot of good can be done in that way. But we also have to realize that, again, it broadens the number of devices, the amount of data, how that data is being generated. It all actually has to be supported from a cyber perspective as well. Just briefly, we spoke to CertNexus being a certification provider. We did want to make you aware of our cybersecurity and other tracks that are available as well. Again, this is available on our website at certnexus.com. And with that, we'll go into the Q&A. I believe we have just about 5 minutes left for any Q&A that we have. So please, if you want to type any questions that you have in the Q&A chat box. And while we're waiting for those questions to come in, just a few other points that I did want to touch on that Megan was talking about as well. Obviously, we've been very pleased to participate within the NICE workforce committees and work groups. They're doing fabulous work. So if you're an employer, Megan touched on this earlier, I think many times job descriptions of the past have been looking for that unicorn. We kind of dump everything that we want into a single job description, where NICE is, in this framework, has really provided the ability for us to really look at actually what are the competencies we need. Again, those tasks that are going to be performed, the skills, the knowledge, skills, and abilities required to perform those tasks. So again, if you are an employer, we'd advise you to focus on them. If you are someone that's an individual, again, this will help you determine potentially what are the skills you have that can and how you can further your career, or if you're looking to enter the cybersecurity workforce, what are the skills and knowledge you need to acquire, along with certification programs, other education programs, or apprenticeship programs that will enable you to do that.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, we have the ability to interact with a number of different levels within organizations, and I have the pleasure of working with some human resources groups, and this is of great interest to them to be able to look at and have something like the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework that they can really utilize and have like conversations and not have to worry about the gaps that they are encountering in terms of job postings and advising them and working with their IT departments. I don't think we have any questions. If there are any, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box. I think we have about 1 minute left.
And just giving more people time. The last thing I did want to hit on, and Megan touched on this as well, is aptitude and attitude. Megan and I are both great examples of people in technology careers. One of us has an art degree, the other of us an English degree. But again, we had the aptitude and the attitude and the desire, and so it's a great opportunity again to look outside of, as Megan shared earlier, computer science degrees or other STEM degree programs. Although we want to obviously again widen the funnel for people coming through those programs, but looking at people that again may have skill sets that are transferable, analytic skills, communication skills, the ability to learn new technologies quickly, et cetera. Again, we've seen so many people, and I'm sure people on this webinar as well, have seen success of people that have come from non-traditional backgrounds as well.
And Jeff, we have one question. Any advice about, Sid asks, any advice about crisis response?
Yeah. So crisis response. Yeah.
In less than 1 minute, please.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it starts one of the biggest challenges we have is response in totality. I think we've focused so much on the technology, and so in crisis response, that even goes back to incident response, and back to those 280 days of being able to identify and contain a breach. And I think this is the challenge we have to focus on, is that as much as the technologies provide us from a protection standpoint, we need to focus as much on detection and response. And that goes beyond just incident response to crisis response. And we've seen that obviously with the pandemic, with digital transformations, a greater remote workforce, et cetera. It is a greater focus of our teams, and there's obviously, as you saw, a greater need from a job or job opening or career opportunity perspective as well.
And Sid, we're seeing some amazing things in terms of crisis response across the organization, not just specifically focused on the cyber professional or even the IT professional. We have cyber ranges that are now creating scenarios for all of the business partners across organizations, and some amazing work that's being done within the work groups as well. So I know Jeff and I belong to a variety of work groups. I'm on training and certification, so please feel free to join any of those. And then Sid asks for any presentation training for the trainers opportunities. Yes, we work with partners that, especially in this virtual environment, there's a lot of great resources out there in terms of how to present, especially in this virtual environment that we are in today. There are amazing, we have sister companies that we work with that work with presentation skills, etc. So Sid, feel free to get in contact with Jeff or I if you have any additional questions on that. All right, I think that is it. I want to thank everyone. Jeff, it's always a pleasure presenting with you. Want to thank everyone for taking out the time today, and congratulations to the NICE team on the new cybersecurity workforce framework that went out today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us via the conference or via CertNexus.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. Stay safe.